Welcome to Hard Script.
It started with a joke. At least, that's what she thought it was. We were at a house party, one of those wine glass, acoustic music, everyone knows everyone kind of nights. I knew maybe 3 people there. My wife, Amanda, knew 15. She floated through the room like she owned it. Same laugh. Same dress I bought her for our anniversary last year. It still fit like the moment I gave it to her. Tight where it should be, soft where it mattered. We were supposed to be reconnecting. That was the plan. We'd had a rough stretch. Work tension, long silences, excuses not to go to bed at the same time. But this party was supposed to be neutral ground. Clean slate. She was halfway through her second glass of white when it happened. I was talking with the host in the kitchen, watching Amanda from the corner of my eye. She was by the fire pit. Some guy I didn't recognize had joined her. Tall, smug, too relaxed. Then I heard it. Not loud, but just enough to cut through the buzz of conversation. "Mind if I steal your wife?" He said it while looking straight at me. I wasn't even next to them. He projected it like a challenge. Amanda laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not an uncomfortable one. She laughed like it was the funniest thing she'd heard all night. She didn't even glance in my direction. She just touched the guy's arm and smiled. That was all it took. Not the words. Not the tone. The laugh. Because that laugh told me everything I needed to know. It wasn't about him. It was about her comfort in making me invisible. She thought I'd brush it off. She thought I'd play along. Pretend to be the chill husband who knows it's all just fun. I didn't. I didn't argue. Didn't call her out. Didn't confront the guy. I just watched. And in that moment, something shifted. Not in her. In me. Because silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's strategy. By the time we got home that night, she was still laughing, scrolling through photos from the party, texting someone. I didn't ask who. I didn't need to. At 2:14 a.m., she went to shower. At 2:17, I opened our joint bank account. At 2:19, I transferred everything that was mine. By morning, she was standing in the kitchen in a towel, holding her phone with both hands, eyes wide. She looked up at me like I'd just vanished. But I hadn't. I was right there, just already gone. She didn't notice at first. It wasn't the missing money that shook her. It was the missing reaction. We always argued. That was our cycle. She'd cross a line. I'd call it out. She'd cry. I'd bend. Then nothing changed. But that morning, I broke the pattern. I didn't yell. Didn't slam doors. Didn't even raise an eyebrow. She stood there in a towel, gripping her phone like it was a bomb. "Why is our account empty?" she asked, voice thin. I kept pouring my coffee. She stepped closer, waving the phone. "Did you move the money?" I nodded once. No explanation. No drama. That's when her voice shifted. "It was a joke," she said. "You know that, right?" She laughed again, same laugh from the party. But this time it sounded like she was testing it, trying to see if it still worked on me. It didn't. I took a sip of coffee and walked past her. No questions. No accusations. And that silence? It scared her more than anything I could have shouted. Because for the first time, she didn't know what page I was on. And she hated not being in control of the narrative. She followed me down the hall, tossing words over her shoulder like they'd fixed something. It was harmless. He was just being dumb. I didn't even talk to him after that. I didn't respond. Because I wasn't listening for answers anymore. I already had everything I needed. It wasn't about that guy. It wasn't about that line. It was about how quickly she gave someone else access to what used to be sacred. And how easily she expected forgiveness to follow. By noon, she had stopped defending herself and started deflecting. She brought up old wounds. "You haven't exactly been a saint either." She mentioned work stress. "You've been distant for months." She even tried sympathy. "I thought maybe you didn't love me anymore." But all of it felt like static. She was throwing sparks at a brick wall, hoping something would catch. Nothing did. I didn't leave that day. Not physically. But I left in every other way that mattered. The emotional lock had been picked, and I was already out the door. I started packing the essentials, documents, passwords, backups. She watched from the kitchen, silent now, because she could feel it, that I wasn't angry, just done. And done hits harder than rage, because you can't argue with silence. You just sit in it. And she did. She must have thought she still had the power. That whatever fire had started earlier could be smothered by habit, by comfort, by the routines we used to lean on when things got shaky. So that night, hours after the party, hours after the silence, Hours after she tried spinning guilt into humor, she changed tactics. She put on the old t-shirt I used to say made her look like home. The lights were low. She'd lit a candle. She waited until I was in bed. And then she climbed in next to me like nothing had happened. Like there hadn't been a moment where she laughed while another man disrespected our marriage. Like I hadn't seen how easy it was for her to pretend I wasn't even standing there. Her hand slid across my chest. Familiar. Rehearsed. But I didn't move. Not a flinch. Not a twitch. I kept staring at the ceiling like I was alone in the room. Because in my head I was. She froze. The hand stayed for a moment, uncertain, waiting for warmth that never came. And slowly, like a curtain dropping, she pulled it back. No words were spoken, but they didn't need to be. The message was louder than anything I could have said. I wasn't playing this game anymore. I wasn't one of her soft landings. I wasn't going to be the emotional crutch she leaned on when guilt got heavy. She rolled away from me. And for the first time in our marriage, I didn't turn to follow. Didn't chase the comfort. Didn't reach out to make peace. Because I wasn't looking for peace. I was watching the pieces fall exactly where they belonged. She didn't sleep that night. I could feel it. Her breathing never settled. She shifted constantly. The silence between us became heavier than any fight we'd ever had. Because she realized something she wasn't ready to face. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't one of those nights where we argue, disconnect, and patch it up over coffee. This was the beginning of her losing access. To my thoughts. To my presence. To my softness. And once that access is gone, there's no password reset. That night, I slept like a man who'd already made his decision. She didn't. Because for the first time, she felt what it was like to be next to someone. And know they'd already left. The next morning, I was up before the sun. Showered. Dressed. Keys in hand. I didn't slam drawers or make noise to prove a point. I moved with purpose. She stumbled into the kitchen, wearing confusion like it was her second skin. No makeup. No front. She looked like someone who'd just realized her safe zone was under threat. She stood by the fridge, arms crossed, searching my face like it was a map to a place she no longer had access to. "You're up early." I didn't respond. I was pouring coffee. The silence stretched too long for her comfort, so she added, "Where are you going?" Still nothing. She blinked, frustrated, maybe even a little afraid, because this was new territory for her. I wasn't cold. I wasn't cruel. I was unreadable. And to someone who had always counted on being able to press the right emotional buttons, that was worse than anger. She leaned on the counter and asked, softly, "What are you thinking?" I looked at her then, directly, and I said 5 words. Clear, calm, without weight or heat. "This isn't your home anymore." She froze. Because those words weren't shouted in fury. They were spoken like a verdict. Like a line that had been crossed hours ago, and now I was just informing her of the consequences. She started to respond, but I was already grabbing my jacket. She followed me to the door, her voice catching up before her thoughts could. "Wait, what are you saying? What does that mean?" But she already knew. The night before had shattered her illusion. And this was just the execution of the choice I'd already made in silence. I didn't give her a speech. Didn't outline the offenses. Didn't ask for her version of events. Because the moment you start negotiating with betrayal, you lower your own value. And I wasn't negotiating. I was moving. Out of the house. Out of the role. Out of the pattern. When I walked out, I didn't slam the door. I closed it softly, like you would when leaving a room that no longer echoes your voice. And that silence behind me? It was the sound of a woman finally realizing that consequences don't always arrive with a warning. Sometimes, they just walk out the front door, without looking back. I spent that day setting up in a short-term rental, nothing fancy. A quiet, clean apartment on the edge of town with just the basics: bed, desk, coffee maker. I wasn't looking for comfort. I was building a perimeter. By 7 p.m., the text started. First light. "Can we talk?" Then guilty. "You didn't even give me a chance." Then desperate. "I miss you. Please come home." Each one landed like a rock tossed at a glass house she'd already shattered herself. And I didn't respond. Because when a person only starts valuing you after they've lost access to you, what they're mourning isn't you. It's their own reflection. It took her 8 texts before she realized silence had a weight of its own. By 9:30, the tone had shifted. Now it was fear. Are you talking to a lawyer? Please don't do anything yet. I didn't cheat, I swear. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. That last one, that was the hook. That was her trying to rewrite the laugh. Reframe it as something harmless. But intent means nothing when disrespect is the outcome. She could spin the story however she liked. It didn't change the truth. And truth doesn't need volume. It just needs clarity. I scrolled through her messages one last time. Then I took a screenshot of the whole thread. Opened my contacts. Found her father's number. Forwarded it, without comment. Not to embarrass her. Not for revenge. But because he'd been the one who stood across from me at our wedding and said, "If you ever need anything, call me." So I did. Not to ask for help. To return the responsibility. The man who raised her could now see, unfiltered, what she had done. And what I had walked away from. I never got a reply from him. Didn't expect one. Some things don't need discussion. They just need exposure. After that, I turned off my phone, closed the blinds, sat on the floor with a drink, and stared at the blank wall ahead of me. And I felt peace. Not relief. Peace. The kind that comes when you stop trying to fix what was never truly broken. Just hollow. You can't patch a house made of dust. You walk out before it collapses on you. And in that quiet apartment, I realized something. She thought I left because of one comment. But what I really left behind was the illusion that we ever had something real. And once an illusion breaks, there's no going back. 3 days of silence. 3 days of no response. No drama. No validation. She couldn't take it. So she came to me. I was sitting at the small kitchen table in the rental, finishing off a sandwich, when I heard the knock. Not urgent. Not hesitant. Just there. Like she'd convinced herself this was still her right. I opened the door. She looked wrecked. Makeup faded, eyes red, wearing a hoodie I didn't recognize. That told me everything. She hadn't come from home. She'd come from someone else's place. Probably the same someone she had laughed with that night. But now she stood there like a child who lost their toy. I stepped aside. Didn't say a word. She walked in slow, scanning the apartment like she expected it to be temporary. Like I was playing hard to get. She sat down at the table without asking, like muscle memory. Then the tears started. "I've been a mess," she said. "I can't eat. I can't sleep. I didn't think it would go this far." I didn't answer. I just watched. Because when people know they've lost leverage, they switch to pity. And pity is a tool dressed up as regret. She kept talking about how lonely the house felt, how none of our friends were texting her, how even her dad hadn't called back. She mentioned the forwarded messages. Said it was cruel. Said I was humiliating her. That was the moment I knew. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she couldn't control how I reacted to it. This wasn't about losing me. It was about losing the comfort, the safety net, the curated image she built around being the good wife. Now that it cracked, she was scrambling to patch the leak, hoping I'd still hand her the tools. I didn't. I asked one question. "Do you regret what you did, or just that I left?" She blinked like I'd slapped her. Didn't answer. Because she knew. And so did I. That silence. That was my confirmation. I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. She sat frozen. I said nothing. Just looked at her. Eventually, she stood up and walked out, slower than she came in. Like maybe she still thought this was just a phase. What she didn't understand was, phases pass. But a decision? A real one? That doesn't just pass. It stays. And from the moment she laughed at another man's joke at my expense, mine was made. The next morning, I didn't waste time. I didn't replay her tears. Didn't second-guess my silence. Didn't entertain the maybe loop that traps so many men in cycles of disrespect. I opened my laptop, pulled up the attorney's email thread I'd started the night I walked out. Everything was already in place. Drafts, financials, timelines. I just had to hit send. But I didn't stop there. She worked at a sleek corporate firm. Tight image. Tight circles. She once told me perception was everything in her line of work. I remembered that. So instead of mailing the divorce papers to our house, I sent them directly to her company, to Human Resources, with instructions for them to acknowledge receipt with a signature. Cold. No. Calculated. The same way she laughed in front of our friends when that guy said he wanted to steal her. The same way she tried to flip the story and play the victim. The same way she wore the hoodie of another man while crying in my kitchen. I didn't need to scream. I just needed the truth to arrive where it would echo. At 11:43 a.m., I got a delivery confirmation. She'd signed for the envelope. I pictured her in that glass-walled office of hers, trying to keep her world stitched together while holding an official envelope with her name and my decision inside it. It wasn't revenge. It was accountability. Letting the mask slip in private is one thing. Watching it fall in front of your curated audience? That's something you don't forget. By 3 p.m., my phone lit up. Unfamiliar number. Voicemail. It was her boss. "Hey, I'm not sure what's going on between you and Claire, but this isn't the right channel." I deleted the message. Because what people like her never expect is that the man they thought they could play quiet can stay quiet while dismantling the entire stage. I went back to packing. I had already found a permanent place. A condo by the lake. Simple. Clean. Mine. And in that new space, there would be no reminders. No shared furniture. No wedding photos. No wine glasses that came in pairs. Just peace. And silence. The kind that doesn't ask for explanations. The kind that doesn't tolerate excuses. That night, she texted again. All it said was, "Why would you embarrass me like that?" I didn't reply. Because the real embarrassment wasn't mine to own. She just didn't realize. You can't humiliate someone who's already walked away. But you can drown in the echo of your own performance when no one claps. She found the new address faster than I expected. A friend of a friend, maybe. Someone who still thought this was fixable. Someone who didn't understand that silence, in the right hands, becomes a weapon. It was late, nearly 9. The sun had just slipped behind the waterline, casting that slow orange burn across the lake. I was sitting on the patio, drink in hand, watching it fade. Then headlights. A car parked. Doors slammed. And then footsteps. Slow, careful ones. Like she knew she was walking on glass, hoping not to bleed this time. I didn't move. Didn't stand. I just waited. She stepped into the light. Same hoodie. But this time, no tears. This wasn't desperation. It was damage control. "I'm not here to fight," she said. "I just think we need to talk. For closure." That word. Closure. It's never for the one who's already made peace. It's for the one who still thinks there's a door half open. She sat across from me without asking. Her voice was calm, measured. She spoke in full sentences. Polished. Like a presentation. A pitch. She talked about context, about misunderstandings, about mutual respect. Then she got to it. "I know the divorce is happening. I'm not fighting that. But we could keep it quiet. No more drama. No more public moves." There it was. She didn't care about the marriage. She cared about the perception of its end. About who saw it, who judged it, and how it affected her standing. I let her finish. Every word. Then I stood up, walked inside for 10 seconds, and came back. In my hand, a single sheet of paper. I handed it to her. She looked confused. Then she read the header. "What you've lost, by your own hand." Beneath it, a short list. A man who never raised his voice at you. A home built in loyalty, not just walls. A future that trusted your silence would protect us, not mock me. A marriage that died not from betrayal, but from your performance of it. She read it all, quietly, then folded the paper in half and placed it in her lap like it was heavy. She looked up, and for the first time, she didn't ask a question. Because she knew the conversation wasn't about recovery. It was a record, a receipt, of everything she'd burned while laughing. I stood, walked inside, left the door open just long enough for her to follow. She didn't. She sat there for another 10 minutes in silence, then left. And this time, she didn't come back. The quiet didn't last long. Not this time. It started with a message from Rachel, her old college roommate. Just one line. "I saw what happened at that party. You didn't deserve that." I stared at it for a while. Not because it shocked me, but because it didn't. Her world was cracking, and the people around her were trying to find dry ground before the whole thing sank. That same afternoon, 2 more messages came in. One from Beth, her gym buddy. One from Kevin, a couple friend. Same tone. Same rhythm. They weren't defending her. They weren't asking me to forgive her. They were apologizing for staying silent. Kevin's message was the clearest. "Man, we saw how she looked at that guy. We just didn't want to get involved. I'm sorry. You were solid. Always." Solid. It was a word that stuck. Because it reminded me of something I already knew. In every group, when the image cracks, people scatter to preserve themselves. And the fact that her own circle was now reaching out to me, privately, carefully, meant only one thing. The show was over. The audience wasn't clapping. They were walking out, whispering about the lead actress and the performance that cost her everything. I didn't reply to any of them. Not because I was angry, but because the closure they were looking for wasn't mine to give. They weren't there for me when it mattered. And I didn't need their validation now. I had already chosen stillness. And in that stillness, something interesting happened. The space she used to occupy, emotionally, mentally, physically, began to refill. But not with pain, not with memories, with clarity. I started sleeping better, waking up lighter, reading again, running again, not to escape, but because the weight was finally gone. The kind of weight you don't realize you're carrying until it's ripped off you in one violent, disrespectful moment. That laugh, weeks ago, was her undoing. But my silence? That was the rope she tripped on. And now, even the people who once cheered her on were quietly stepping away. In the end, the performance wasn't just disrespectful. It was unsustainable. Because masks slip, crowds thin, and when the stage lights fade, you're left with exactly what you built. Or broke. She broke us. And I rebuilt myself. Alone. Without a single word wasted. 6 months passed. No contact. No messages. No drama. The divorce finalized quietly. Assets split. Names removed. Locks changed. I moved fully into the lake condo. Minimal. Clean. Not just in furniture, but in thought. No leftover emotions. No waiting for closure. No hunting for explanations. Just life. Still. Controlled. Mine. I took a trip to Colorado alone. Climbed a trail we once talked about, but never hiked. At the summit, I stood in silence. There was no metaphor. No poetic echo. Just wind, sky, and breath. And I realized that was enough. I wasn't recovering anymore. I wasn't healing. I was simply living, with nothing left to prove. Then, 2 weeks after I got back, it came. A message. Her name on my phone. No question marks. No emojis. No drama. Just a single sentence. I finally understand what I did and what I lost. I stared at it for a long time. Not because it stirred anything, but because it didn't. That version of me, the one who would have craved this acknowledgement, was gone. She was speaking to a ghost. And ghosts don't reply. I set the phone down. Didn't delete the message. But I didn't answer either. Because some stories don't need sequels. Some burns don't need to be touched again. And some lessons only sink in when no one's left to hear them. That night, I sat on the porch again. Same view, same silence. Only now, it wasn't a silence filled with pain or memory. It was peace. The kind you earn. The kind you fight for by not fighting. By choosing absence over chaos. Dignity over noise. Power over performance. I poured a drink. Wrote something down in my journal. The final sentence. The one I'd waited to feel, not force. You don't win by being louder. You win by walking away. So far, they can't even find your shadow. And that was the end. Not of the pain, but of her part in my story. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories.